Hello, I'm Josie Taylor. Once the problem in regional Victoria was finding and keeping doctors. But now some country communities are being flooded with doctors who are trained overseas. And tonight, experienced GPs go public with their concerns. They allege some international medical graduates are working as GPs without being trained to an acceptable Australian standard and without proper supervision. Anna McDonald travelled to Swan Hill for this report.
It's a typically busy afternoon at the Swan Hill Hospital in remote northwest Victoria. Like a lot of regional hospitals in Australia, this one's predominantly staffed by international medical graduates, or IMGs.
I'm keeping my options open at the moment, but if I'm given the opportunity, I would like to pursue in psychiatry.
I want to get some experience from the hospital because my long-term goal is to be a GP, and for that I think this is a good beginning.
Around 3,000 IMGs arrived in Australia last financial year. These doctors at Swan Hill have decided to gain full registration by training in a regional hospital. But many others are poached by corporate clinics to work as general practitioners. Because of their lack of training in Australia, they work under limited registration.
That offends me because I think a general practice is a specialty qualification. It does involve training, it does involve your time in hospital, it does involve your time in a practice being properly supervised. And, you know, so I find that offensive that's all of a sudden, you know, anyone can be a GP. And that's a sentiment that's shared by a lot of my colleagues.
Dr. Ernan Hession came out from Ireland as an IMG 25 years ago.
How are we going? Busy in the wards?
Since then, he's worked as a GP in Swan Hill and trained around 100 IMGs who arrive in town as part of their training to become fully qualified doctors.
But at the same time, you do need to be very cautious. They can get hypoglycemic episodes and that.
He's decided to speak out against what he describes as a double standard of healthcare in regional Australia.
Creates this model where you basically have, you know, on one hand the quick fix and then the genuine general practice. So, you know, you shouldn't have that either. It's not good.
His concerns are shared by the president of the Rural Doctors Association, Dr. Mike Moynihan.
Unfortunately, the older GPs who train themselves up mostly rather than being trained for this work are now reaching retirement age, and the average age is probably for these doctors in Victoria over 55. So they're being replaced in one way or another by various different sorts of doctors.
Employers can recruit these doctors on terms and conditions which are highly competitive with what local clinics must pay, and they can then hoover up much of the business in these regional areas to the detriment of the established clinics, and that has significant consequences, I think, for the overall care in those communities.
The TriStar Medical Group is one of the country's biggest employers of IMGs. Since 2003, 38 TriStar clinics have opened in Victoria, New South Wales and the ACT. There are plans for 7 more to open over the next 12 months.
When you achieve something like this, it just it have an amazing sweet taste, especially when you are doing it in a country like our great country.
Mildura-based Dr. Khaled El Sheikh says the rapid growth of his business is due to a shortage of GPs.
There's still a massive shortage. We definitely better than a few years ago, but there's still a big need.
There's certainly people in Canberra that look at their little map and they see, oh, Swan Hill has 20 GPs, there's no problems there. But the reality is when you scratch under the surface, the new doctors that have arrived are in training positions. Most of them haven't worked in a hospital setting in a developed country before.
The TriStar model has many critics. A lot of the doctors who work there come to Australia on temporary 457 visas. They're allowed to practice on a conditional basis without obtaining their GP fellowship or passing the Australian Medical Council exam. Is there a level of disquiet about TriStar?
There is, yes. It's very commonly expressed. It's known that the doctors have only limited registration. It's known that they're telephone supervised.
Dr El Sheikh admits he was investigated by the medical board over allegations he was supervising well beyond the recommended number of trainee doctors. He says the complaint was dismissed.
I personally do a lot of support to the doctors, so I'm pretty much available because of my qualification and my standard and my passion as an educator. But supervision as supervisor for the medical board requirement, that's not correct.
Professor Bob Birrell has researched TriStar and the broader issue of doctor migration. He believes the limited registration granted to IMGs should be scrapped, so there's no longer a double standard of GP qualification. Do you think that there are too many doctors now?
Yes, I think Australia is awash with doctors. A massive increase in domestically trained doctors, thousands of permanent resident IMGs struggling to get into the medical profession, and several thousand more doctors coming in each year via the immigration program.
This is a new direction. This is a direction which is going. And it doesn't put, I won't call it two-standard general practice. It is not. This is actually the new way general practice is going.
Back at Swan Hill Hospital, there are concerns about the future of the maternity ward. The 2 obstetricians are retiring next month, and there are no local doctors qualified to deliver the town's 200 newborns each year. So essentially the country GP as we once knew it is slowly fading away?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the stats all show that there's a closure of obstetrics units. There's less and less people who are procedurally skilled. And it's a very sad situation, really. It seems to be a quick fix solution to what is a very serious problem.
And no adverse findings have been made against Dr El Sheikh. The medical board says it's confident IMGs are being adequately supervised.